Hey, it's Tommy. Let me tell you something. In my 35 years as a mechanic, I've seen thousands of engines that people thought were completely finished. Owners would come into my shop ready to junk their car or spend thousands on a new engine, convinced that their vehicle was beyond saving. But here's what I discovered after all these years of working under the hood. There's one thing that brings more dead engines back to life than anything else, and most people have never even heard of it. I'm talking about carbon buildup. That's the silent killer that's choking your engine right now, and you probably don't even know it. Carbon deposits accumulate inside your engine over years of driving, and they slowly strangle the life out of it. Your engine loses power gradually, so slowly that you don't notice it happening. Your fuel economy drops bit by bit. You might hear some knocking or pinging sounds that weren't there before, and eventually your engine starts misfiring, running rough, or refusing to start altogether. The good news is that removing this carbon buildup can literally bring an engine back from the dead. I've seen engines that were running so poorly that the owner was ready to send them to the junkyard, and after a proper carbon cleaning they ran like they were brand new again. This isn't some miracle cure or snake oil. This is basic engine science that the dealerships and quick lube shops don't want you to know about, because they'd rather sell you a new car or an expensive engine replacement. Let me explain exactly what carbon buildup is and why it's destroying your engine right now as we speak. Every time your engine burns fuel, it creates byproducts from the combustion process. Most of these byproducts exit through your exhaust system and out the tailpipe, but some of them stick to the internal surfaces of your engine. Over time, these deposits build up layer after layer, like plaque building up in your arteries, and just like plaque in your arteries can lead to a heart attack. Carbon buildup in your engine can lead to complete engine failure if left untreated for too long. The places where carbon accumulates the most are your intake valves, your combustion chambers, your piston tops, and your fuel injectors. Each of these areas plays a critical role in how your engine runs, and when they get coated with carbon, everything starts to go wrong in ways that are hard to diagnose. Your intake valves are supposed to open and close smoothly to let air and fuel into the combustion chamber at precisely the right moment. When they're covered in carbon, they can't seal properly against the valve seat, which causes compression loss and misfires that make your engine run rough. Your combustion chambers are where the magic happens, where fuel and air mix and ignite to create the power that moves your vehicle down the road. When they're coated with carbon, you get hot spots that cause pre-ignition and knocking, which can actually damage your pistons and connecting rods over time. Your fuel injectors are precision instruments that spray fuel in a fine mist for optimal combustion and maximum efficiency. When they're clogged with carbon deposits, they can't spray properly, which leads to poor fuel economy, rough running, and incomplete combustion that creates even more carbon. Now here's what they're not telling you at the dealership or the quick lube shop. Modern engines are actually more prone to carbon buildup than older engines, and there's a specific technical reason for this that the manufacturers don't like to advertise. Most modern engines use a technology called direct injection, where fuel is sprayed directly into the combustion chamber instead of into the intake manifold like older engines did. This technology improves fuel economy and power output, which is why manufacturers love it, but it has a major downside that they don't mention in the sales brochure. In older port injection, fuel would wash over the intake valves on its way into the combustion chamber, and the detergents in the fuel would help keep those valves clean by dissolving carbon deposits before they could build up. With direct injection, the fuel never touches the intake valves because it's sprayed directly into the cylinder, so there's nothing to clean off the carbon that accumulates on those valve surfaces. The crankcase ventilation system sends oil vapors through the intake, and those vapors coat the intake valves and bake on from the heat of the engine, creating a hard, crusty layer of carbon that just keeps getting thicker and thicker. If you have a direct injection engine, which includes most cars made after 2010 from virtually every manufacturer, you're almost certainly dealing with significant carbon buildup right now, even if your car seems to be running fine. I've seen direct injection engines with only 50,000 miles that had intake valves so caked with carbon that they looked like they belonged in a coal mine. The carbon was so thick that the valves could barely close properly. This is a design flaw that the manufacturers don't like to talk about because it would make their fancy new technology look bad and might affect their sales numbers. So how do you know if carbon buildup is killing your engine? There are several warning signs that you should watch for, and I want you to pay close attention to these because catching this problem early can save you thousands of dollars. The first sign is a gradual loss of power that you might not even notice at first because it happens so slowly. Your car just doesn't accelerate like it used to, and you find yourself pressing the gas pedal harder to get the same response you used to get. The second sign is decreased fuel economy that you can track if you pay attention to how often you're filling up. If you're getting fewer miles per gallon than you used to get when the car was newer, carbon buildup could be the culprit stealing your fuel efficiency. The third sign is rough idling that you can feel through the steering wheel or the seat. Your engine should idle smoothly and quietly, but if it's shaking or vibrating at idle, that's often a sign of carbon-related misfires on one or more cylinders. The fourth sign is engine knocking or pinging, especially under acceleration or when climbing hills. This happens when carbon deposits create hotspots in the combustion chamber that ignite the fuel before the spark plug fires, causing the fuel to detonate at the wrong time. The fifth sign is a check engine light, often with diagnostic codes related to misfires or lean running conditions that your mechanic might not immediately connect to carbon buildup. Now let me tell you about the different ways to remove carbon buildup and which ones actually work based on my 35 years of experience. There are basically 3 approaches, and they range from simple and cheap to complex and expensive, and each one has its place depending on how bad your situation is. The first approach is chemical cleaning, which you can do yourself at home without any special tools or knowledge. This involves using a specialized cleaning solution that you either pour into your fuel tank or spray directly into your intake system while the engine is running. The fuel tank additives are the easiest to use because you just pour them in with your gas and drive normally without doing anything else. They contain detergents that help dissolve carbon deposits as they pass through your fuel system and combustion chambers. These work reasonably well for light carbon buildup and for ongoing maintenance to prevent deposits from forming, but they're not strong enough to remove heavy deposits that have been building up for years and have hardened into a crusty layer. The more effective chemical method is an intake cleaning service, where a technician sprays a cleaning solution directly into your intake manifold while the engine is running at a specific speed. The solution travels through the intake system and into the combustion chambers, dissolving carbon deposits along the way and burning them off through the exhaust. This is more effective than fuel additives because the cleaning solution makes direct contact with the deposits on your intake valves and in your combustion chambers at a much higher concentration. A good intake cleaning service costs between $100 and $200 depending on your location and can make a noticeable difference in how your engine runs, especially if you've never had one done before. The second approach is walnut shell blasting, which is the gold standard for removing carbon from intake valves on direct injection engines where the buildup is most severe. This is a specialized procedure where a technician removes the intake manifold to expose the intake ports and valves, then uses compressed air to blast crushed walnut shells at the intake valves at high velocity. The walnut shells are hard enough to scrub away even the most stubborn carbon deposits, but soft enough that they won't damage the metal surfaces of the valves or the valve seats. This procedure is incredibly effective and can remove even the heaviest carbon buildup that chemical cleaners can't touch. The downside is that it's labor-intensive because the intake manifold has to come off, and it's expensive as a result, typically costing between $400 and $800 depending on your vehicle and how accessible the intake manifold is. But if your direct injection engine has significant carbon buildup on the intake valves, this is the only method that will truly get those valves clean and restore your engine's performance. The third approach is manual cleaning, which involves actually taking apart the engine and physically scraping or cleaning the carbon deposits off the affected components by hand using picks, brushes, and solvents. This is the most thorough method, but also the most expensive and time-consuming because of all the labor involved in disassembling and reassembling the engine. It's usually only necessary in extreme cases where the carbon buildup is so severe that other methods won't work, or when you need to clean areas that walnut blasting can't reach. We're talking about engines that have been neglected for many years, or that have specific mechanical problems that caused excessive carbon formation. Let me share a story that shows you just how powerful carbon cleaning can be when it's done right. A customer brought in a 10-year-old sedan with about 120,000 miles on the odometer. The engine was running terribly, misfiring on multiple cylinders, barely able to maintain a steady idle, and throwing check engine lights constantly with multiple misfire codes stored in the computer. The customer had already been to 2 other shops looking for answers. One told him he needed a new engine for $5,000 because the compression was too low to be worth fixing. The other said the car wasn't worth repairing and he should just buy something new because the repair cost would exceed the value of the vehicle. I did my own diagnosis and found that the engine had severe carbon buildup on all 4 intake valves from years of direct injection operation without any cleaning. The compression was low because the valves couldn't seal properly against all that carbon buildup on the valve faces and seats. I recommended a walnut shell blasting service to remove the carbon, which cost the customer about $600, including the labour to remove and reinstall the intake manifold. After the cleaning was complete, I ran another compression test and the numbers were back to factory specifications on all 4 cylinders. The engine ran smoothly without any vibration, the misfires were completely gone, and the check engine light stayed off. That customer drove that car for another 5 years and over 60,000 more miles before he finally traded it in for something newer, and the engine was still running strong when he did. That's the power of addressing carbon buildup before you give up on an engine. It's not a gimmick or a temporary fix that will wear off in a few months. When you remove the carbon that's choking your engine, you're restoring it to the condition it was designed to operate in from the factory. You're giving it back the compression, the airflow, and the fuel delivery that it needs to run properly and efficiently. Now let me tell you how to prevent carbon buildup from destroying your engine in the first place, because prevention is always better and cheaper than cure. There are several things you can do to minimize carbon accumulation and keep your engine running clean for the long haul. The first thing is to use quality fuel from reputable gas stations that you trust. All gasoline sold in the United States is required to contain a minimum level of detergent additives by law, but some brands add significantly more than the required minimum because they know it makes a difference. These detergents help keep your fuel system clean and reduce carbon formation throughout the engine. Top-tier gasoline, which you can identify by the top-tier logo displayed at the pump, contains higher levels of these cleaning additives than regular fuel. The extra cost per gallon is minimal, usually just a few cents more, but the long-term benefits for your engine are significant and worth the investment. The second thing is to add a fuel system cleaner to your tank every few thousand miles as part of your regular maintenance routine. I recommend doing this every 5,000 miles or so, which conveniently lines up with your oil change schedule, so it's easy to remember. A good fuel system cleaner costs about $10 per bottle and helps dissolve carbon deposits before they can build up to problematic levels. Think of it like brushing your teeth every day. You do it regularly to prevent problems from developing, not just when you already have a cavity that needs filling. The third thing is to let your engine reach full operating temperature regularly by taking longer drives. Short trips where the engine never fully warms up are terrible for carbon buildup because of how the engine runs when it's cold. When the engine is cold, it runs rich, meaning it uses more fuel than necessary to ensure reliable combustion. This excess fuel doesn't burn completely and contributes to carbon formation on the valves and in the combustion chambers. If most of your driving consists of short trips around town, make a point of taking a longer drive on the highway at least once a week to let everything get fully warmed up and burn off some of those deposits naturally. The fourth thing is to avoid excessive idling whenever possible. When your engine is idling, it's running at low temperatures and low airflow, which are perfect conditions for carbon to accumulate because the combustion process is less efficient. If you're going to be stopped for more than a minute or two, it's actually better to turn the engine off and restart it when you're ready to go than to let it sit there idling and building up carbon. The fifth thing, and this is specifically for direct injection engines, is to consider having a preventive walnut shell blasting done every 60,000 to 80,000 miles before problems develop. I know that sounds expensive as a preventive measure, but it's much cheaper than dealing with the problems that severe carbon buildup causes down the road. Think of it as preventive maintenance, like replacing your timing belt before it breaks rather than waiting until it snaps and destroys your engine. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had carbon buildup issues with your vehicle, and what did you do about it? Did a carbon cleaning make a difference in how your engine runs? Or maybe you've been told you need a new engine, and you're wondering if carbon could be the real problem that everyone missed. Drop your questions and experiences in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help you figure out your situation. Don't get ripped off. I'll see you in the next one. Now I want to address something important that might be on your mind. You might be wondering why your mechanic or your dealership has never mentioned carbon buildup to you before, especially if you've been taking your car in for regular service. The answer is complicated and honestly a little frustrating when you understand what's really going on behind the scenes. Some mechanics genuinely don't understand how significant this problem is, especially on modern direct injection engines that work differently than older designs. They were trained on older engines where carbon buildup wasn't as much of an issue because the fuel washing over the intake valves kept them relatively clean. These mechanics might not have updated their knowledge to account for the changes in engine technology, so they missed the diagnosis entirely. Other mechanics know about carbon buildup and understand exactly what's happening, but they don't bring it up to customers because they'd rather wait until the problem gets bad enough to sell you a bigger and more expensive repair. A $600 walnut blasting service doesn't make as much money as a $5,000 engine replacement, and some shops operate on that kind of thinking, unfortunately. Dealerships are often the worst offenders when it comes to this issue. They have every incentive to let your engine deteriorate until you're ready to buy a new car from them. They make their money selling new vehicles, not fixing old ones, so why would they tell you about a relatively inexpensive service that could keep your current car running for another 100,000 miles? It doesn't fit their business model, so they stay quiet and wait for you to come in complaining about performance problems that they can blame on age and mileage. This is why I always tell people to educate themselves about their vehicles and how they work. The more you understand about what your car needs and what can go wrong, the harder it is for someone to take advantage of you or steer you toward repairs you don't actually need. Carbon buildup is a real problem that affects millions of vehicles on the road today, and the solution is straightforward and affordable if you catch it early and address it before it causes serious damage to your engine internals. The fifth thing, and this is specifically for direct injection engines, is to consider having a preventive walnut shell blasting done every 60,000 to 80,000 miles before problems develop. I know that sounds expensive as a preventive measure, but it's much cheaper than dealing with the problems that severe carbon buildup causes down the road. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had carbon buildup issues with your vehicle, and what did you do about it? Did a carbon cleaning make a difference in how your engine runs? Drop your questions and experiences in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help you figure out your situation. Don't get ripped off. I'll see you in the next one.